Three of the Consulting Amigos here today. That includes Ray Anderson, a longtime consultant and working in manufacturing with people to try and sort of ease the pain of communications and build long-term um, long-term efficiencies in companies. He's got a lifetime of experience doing that, and other small businesses as well. And John Mills has had his own electronics business. He's currently in the sort of micro office business, and he's got kind of a unique niche in that particular industry. And he's also done consulting. And I, Ron Burgess, have had I don't know, five or six businesses, and been my primary income has been from consulting for the last 30 years. And so we've all had a lot of small business experience. We're going to miss Ed Lasik here, but we'll see if we can muddle through it. Today, we're following up a little bit our last video, which really talked about what's the future 2026 and where success come from. And well, we're going to talk a little bit more about strategies. How do you do that as a small business? What are the things that you can do? There are just a huge number of outside forces today on small business. And while you hear the market, you hear our president, you hear a lot of economists, and I think probably rightly so, talk about how great the economy is. Yet we seem to have a two-tier economy. Some people call it the K economy, which is we've got people who are making pretty good money and have stable jobs, spending money and living the same way that they have in the past. And then we've got those where their costs are bumping up against their income, and they're finding it a little bit tight. And so that makes it a little bit more difficult for a group of people. Many of those people are consumers, and they're cutting back on their spending. And so certain small businesses are feeling that effect. So, and my point here is small businesses are probably not doing or are not really not doing the same in terms of growth and profit that, say, the macro economy is. And what we want to do is talk about what do you do as a small business to ensure that you can be successful in the year ahead. So there's this concept that Warren Buffett, the famed investor, one of the richest men in the world as a result of his investing, has talked a lot about the moat strategy, and it's really useful for small business. The moat strategy really just means what do you do to protect yourself so that you can kind of be alone? You and your customers are not visible by your competition. Or you're just so different that there is no competition. And of course, there's several strategies around that. We're going to talk about three of the moat strategies. Oh, I see Ray's got a friend there. Yeah. And so that's the Ann. That's Ray Ann, his dog. That's what that is. So John is going to head it off today because we're going to talk a little bit about a subject that he knows about, and that really has to do with the whole aspect of the cost to switch. And what that is really talking about is how much does it cost your customers to switch? So, John, you've had some experience in this in the electronics industry. Talk to us a little bit about some of the things what is it? Why is it important? And let's talk a little bit about some examples of how it can do that.
So it's actually quite a complex situation on a on a retail personal level. Some people they switch suppliers simply based on cost and cost alone, and that's there's a lot of people who buy gasoline, for example, based
Mm.
on what's the lowest cost. They buy coffee for in and out whatever it is from whatever the lowest cost is. So there's a group of people, and I think we're all do this for some things that are not particularly important to us, but we think are the same everywhere. We buy Coca-Cola drinks, or we buy Pepsi drinks, or whatever it is. We buy that from wherever's got the lowest cost. And that's just as simple as it goes. It gets a little bit more complex when you start building dependencies. And so the issue then is if you've got a dependency on something, you want to go to a known supplier and you want to have it predictable, you want to have it safe, you want to have it secure. Basically, what you're doing is you're looking for a trustworthy relationship. If you've got insulin or if you've got some medical issues going on, you don't want to go to the lowest cost supplier of your insulin. Made in Thailand, made in China, made in Russia, insulin. Maybe not. Maybe we want to go to something that we got locally here that we can predict and is controlled. So now we go from a price-based decision to a controlled relationship-based decision. And I think most companies in the long term would like to have a relationship-based client base. One that is, I think, pretty easy for us to look at here in the US in the automobile area. There was a period of time in the 80s that if you're in construction, you had a big debate of were you a Ford guy or were you a GM guy? And there could be, fix and repair daily or the General Motors. There was that like camaraderie of which truck was the better truck. And people didn't switch from one to another very easily. And they held their own and they dealt with that. A couple of interesting things happened. Some of the competitions came in with a lower cost product. They still didn't move until Toyota, over a period of 20 years, continuously improved their product and they improved the product to be of the same level of support, service, dependability of GM and Ford. And some would argue right now, if you look around, you see a lot of all-American, American flagged vehicles. In fact, I got two members of my family who are in the construction business, and one of them is driving Toyotas, and the other one's driving one of the either Ford or General Motors, I can't remember which. But Toyota has become a very valid part of this relationship. How did they switch? Now, the issue is partly General Motors and Ford gave it away. They lost the leading edge. There was a period of time in the late 90s where General Motors didn't go to fuel injection. They didn't go to multi-speed transmissions. Um, Toyota was already there. They had a significantly better product during the course of the 90s than General Motors and Ford both had. And so what
Yeah,
happened over a
service
period
was not as good as Toyota as well, right?
yeah, so what happened is people reluctantly left. So I would say, what's the cost to switch? Why are people reluctant? Well, part of it is because of reputation, part of it is camaraderie. That's so I've given you one where it's just there's no real big implications. But another one that's even more perhaps interesting would be you take somebody like McDonald's and you go, okay, well, what's McDonald's got to do with switching suppliers? Well, call 5,000 or 10,000 McDonald's facilities around the country. And then you look at who supplies their slushy machines, who supplies their coffee machines, who supplies their internet, who supplies their data services. And then you really get down to it. Do they have a supply line database and service that is going on behind the scenes that we don't even see? And the answer is yes. Those suppliers are multi-year, very intentionally entwined relationships built on, it's almost a symbiotic relationship where if you've got the contract for supplying data services for McDonald's in 20 states, if something goes wrong with that service, you are so vitally concerned to solve it equally and as much as the franchisees and the owners and the board of directors. There is a symbiotic relationship that has occurred, and there's an interdependency that has occurred.
Hmm.
And it doesn't come down to price because it comes down to availability, service, efficiencies, long-term ability to do it. So, but you can lose that same way General Motors and Ford kind of lost it to Toyota, but it's a lot more complex. But when it's lost, it's lost. And what's the cost? Well, part of the problem is I'm a very small operator. Here we've got, call it 50 doors that we look after. They all have the same lock system on it. They also have the same hinge system on it. they all have the same nomenclature system on it. If we change from one lock system to another, we got a problem. For example, on the internal doors, we use Quickset product because they're easy to get a lever product. Well, guess what? Quickset changed. You now cannot buy easily rekeyable Quickset locks. Why?
Hmm.
Everyone they sell in the hardware stores, Home Depot and Lowe's, are smart locks. Well, guess what? Smart locks don't let me rekey them to fit my master system. I've got a master system. I've had it for 20 years.
Hmm.
And now it's going by the wayside because they are supplying a product that is consumer based and residential based. It suits you if you want to get a new lock, you just take your old key, you throw it in there, and it works. Hey, great, no problem. Doesn't work for me at all. So I am getting ready to switch. And when we switch from Quickset, we're going to switch all of our locks. At some point, that means we will take out 20 or 30 of the locks and trash them because we don't need them. And I don't want other people to use my codes. So they're being trashed.
What do you do in that business with your 50 doors and 50 people coming in to use your offices and systems, et cetera? Where's the moat strategy in your business?
So it comes back, if you really look at it, it's a soft strategies that people like. And it's not the physical strategies. It's the fact that we end up being safe, secure, well managed. If something happens with the data supply side or the access or whatever it is, they don't really care whether we've got General Motors, Ford, whether we've got AT&T, Uverse, or Fios. They really don't care. All they care about is that whatever the problem is solved by somebody, and they can still continue to use the service as it is. And I'm okay with that because that means that's our responsibility, and I then download that on our suppliers. We want
I think I
suppliers.
can
Yeah.
I think I can come up with a few moat strategies that I see.
Okay, please help.
One of them one of them is that you have a lease. And so you know
Oh,
that
wait,
they're going to
yes.
be there for a period of time and they're not going to just, some people will walk away, but for the most part, you've got a period of time where you know they're going to be there. And so, yes, you want to keep them and you want them to release. So, but that's just one little way to make sure that they just don't come and go as they want to. I think the other one is that you've mentioned some of the standardization and the systems, but when someone is in your office, they're using the internet you've set up. They're using the phone system that you've set up. Um, Literally, they don't have to have the technical aspects in order to be able to just open up a little office. And so, if they're going to leave, that means that they now have to take the responsibility of that.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's true. And one of the most systems is we try to help them do their work.
mhm.
We do our work so they can do their work. And so
Right,
we become a partner with them in
right.
that.
So the act of leaving one location as a business is always a pain, and people don't really like to do that. And it's also true. It's a little easier perhaps in your sort of a micro office business, but you still have some of those same things. It's just hard to do all of those things all at one time. And for a lot of, small single person businesses, one, two, three people, that's a big deal, and they don't have to hire. They're saving money. They don't have to hire a networking guy to put together, a network for two or three or four people. They don't have to. They don't have to call the phone man to come and fix their phone system. Of course, nowadays we're all using cell phones an awful lot, so in a way that's an obsolete thing. They don't. They don't have to have a full desk and a chair and everything because you've got, desks and chairs and cabinets and so forth. So I mean, they end up buying almost like a furnished office that has everything ready. All they have to do is get that new key from you and walk in and sit down with their laptop and plug in, and they are literally working in 5 minutes. It's not a 3 day, 5 day setup. I mean, there were times when I moved into new offices where it took a week of messing around and cabling and all kinds of things in order to be ready to make that move. It was a big deal to go from one office to another office. And of course, when I was in the retail business, it was a bigger deal to open a new store, and to close a store and open a store was a huge, huge deal. So you don't want to be making those decisions. And in that kind of a business, you can see where there are some little moat kinds of structures there that I think have been beneficial. I'll add another one that's a really a personal experience. When I moved into my current home, there was one of those little chair slides. You know, it's a little elevator. You sit on a little chair and it goes up and down the staircase. It was on the outside of the house. Well, it worked for a while and then it didn't work and so forth. And I let it sit for it. Didn't really need it. But then we were having a group of older people and I thought we might need it. And so I called to try and figure out how to fix it. Well, do you suppose that it's called stair lift? Do you suppose anybody would repair a stair lift? Answer,
No.
no. Only stair lift repairs stair lift because everything is custom. Every wire harness, every motor, all the electronics, everything is the way that they built it, and their people know how to do it. And they get pretty good money to come out and take a look and see if they can help you, much more than say a local plumber would be. So you have this direct symbiotic relationship. It doesn't happen a lot. It might only happen every few years, but when you need repair or service on that stair lift, you have to call them. And that's a moat.
Hmm.
You don't switch over to another service person because you really can't. That's true with Samsung refrigerators as well. Now that's come back to bite them. You can buy another kind of a Samsung, or excuse me, another kind of a refrigerator, but typically that's going to be every 10 years or 15 years. So those are some really direct ways when you have custom parts and custom service that is really niche, and we'll talk more about niches in just in a minute. But you know, that's another form of a moat.
So there's another thing that goes on. I think we've experienced this in the electronics industry. Um, for example, there's several US manufacturers of what they call routers and switches, or the components that are needed for Wi-Fi and connecting your in-house wiring for the internet. And over the years, the price of those products, you can buy them for 20% with known Chinese-made companies, and you can buy them almost at 10% for unknown Chinese companies. Um, and we went completely with the US manufacturers in the beginning based on the serviceability and the long life expectancy of the product. And over a period of time, about 20 years ago, we changed to buying some known Chinese-made companies that were basically based off the US companies. And we discovered that several things would happen. The power supplies would wear out, in 2 or 3 years. Well, for residential people, that's not a big deal. But for us, that means we've got a number of our clients down. We went back and we've now been going to US made companies, and some of the stuff they make is still made overseas, but they put their own logo on it and they put their own confirmations on it and the certifications based on US coding. And we've discovered that the longevity of the product has increased. And so we're now going back to buying from US sourced with good warranties in the background. So that's part of that moat strategy is we want to buy something that we know we can deal with, we can replace, and is not a one-off and looks weird.
Yeah. So let's put our heads together here and see if we can come up with two or three things that a small business person can do to start building a moat around their business. One of them we've talked about a couple of them. Recurring service relationships. There's one of them. And
Well, isn't that kind of like you've got to be in communication with your clients, and to some
yes,
extent, you've got to address what your clients' needs are. If
that's right.
you're addressing your own profitability, but you're not addressing your clients' needs, you're headed for bankruptcy no matter how profitable you think you are, because
Yeah,
your clients are going to leave.
right.
And General Motors saw that. They were heading to profitability. They ran in 1995, they ran a 150 pickup truck that still had a carburetor on it.
Mhm.
All the competition were fuel injected. How could you possibly ever do that? Well, they had $200,000, 200,000 carburetors stuck in Michigan somewhere. They decided, well, we'll just sell them with it.
Mm.
Well, they provided their clients a second-rate product based on the competition. That's damaging.
Yeah.
So,
So what clients have we had that have built-in moats? I think I'm thinking about John the folks that we worked with in the coin operating no, excuse me, the coin machine washing machine business.
Mm.
That had several aspects
oh yeah,
because those machines were long-term contracts with the apartment owner, I believe, right?
right. And they also shared in revenue.
Yeah, okay. So there's a revenue sharing. So that's a recurring service relationship. And of course, the residents are the ones who are going to live there, and so they've got a monopoly, a moat, if you will, on ease of use. It's like it's only downstairs or it's only across the hall. You're not going to load everything in and take it in your car and go to another, uh, clothes washing facility and just to save, instead of 50 cents a wash, you get it for 45 cents. No, nobody's going to do that because
Right.
the cost, and this is an example, the cost to switch to an independent shop is just too high. You'd have to have, you know, 10 um 10 loads for the washer in order to be able to make that work out, right? And so that convenience is set up as well, it's a moat and it's also a monopoly. In a way, it's a larger monopoly. Monopolies are moats. Any other clients we've worked with that seem to have that?
Yeah, I had a client who rebuilt transmissions for Hondas, and because the market was so specific, they really had a pretty clear uh, way to dominate in that field. You know, it to me was a way in which they were able to keep out competitors simply because nobody else wanted to spend the time to actually learn how to rebuild a Honda transmission.
Yeah. Now, was that because the transmission was more more complex than a typical transmission, or did they just decide we're going to specialize in this and just be really good at it?
Well, my recollection was that basically um, they kind of fell into it, and it seems to me when we talk about small businesses that that is more of what happens than any design strategy. You know, it's just, gosh, we're going to start rebuilding transmissions, and apparently they were getting a lot of Hondas, and so they kind of migrated in that direction, which in my mind is kind of what happens with small business. There isn't as much strategy as there is, default.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to try and get them to be more strategic this year.
Yeah.
Well, good discussion, guys. Now let's go to number two. Ray's going to kind of kick this one off, and this one is really about building relationships. Uh, John mentioned, and how can you separate them really? John mentioned sometimes deep relationships with customers where you're embedded in their company. That's certainly one of them. Uh, Ray, take that subject and explain it to us and tell us how small businesses can do a better job.
Yeah. I mean, I think with the example I just used of the transmissions was an example of a relationship that was strong enough for them to be able to build a very sustainable business out of it. And to my mind, there are two terms of relationships. You have internal relationships, those with one another, the people that you have, and then you of course have the external relationships that John was just talking about.
Mhm.
And the real strength of a small business is being able to build a moat that keeps the external customers, tied to you. And then internally, you want as much as possible to be able to find people who fit the culture and also fit the profile of what aptitudes are necessary to grow the business.
Mhm. Right, right. And I think that it kind of goes without saying, but small businesses many times um, go into business because they have a technical
Right.
capability and they don't particularly like people. That's kind of a big problem
I
because
see.
that's one of the strongest and most reliable ways to keep and develop business is because you know them. You care about the services and products that provide. You make sure that they're happy on a continual, ongoing basis, and so it just makes a lot of sense. But it's amazing. I guess it's appropriate to say it's amazing how many small businesses are capable at their technical aspects in their product, but they're not capable at the relationship, customer relationship business. And if they can't get pretty big to hire those kinds of people, this falls on them.
Yes, and as we were saying earlier, the reason that the dropout rate of small businesses is astronomical. I mean,
Yeah,
over a period of 10 years, 90+% are gone. And it's simply because they get into business for reasons that are not strategic, but sometimes personal. And there's only so far you can grow a company without having other external things being able to help it grow. And my experience with small businesses is that, 90% of them don't really understand that. They just have a technical expertise that they think is going to make it work in a business, and off they go
right,
to fail
right,
within a matter of years.
right. And I have found that even technical businesses, the clients that I've had over the years, the the special, the little something that was special usually came from the relationships of the people. And so many of the businesses that are successful had good relationships not only with their customers but with their suppliers. And
Hmm.
they may or may not have had the best personalities in the world, but they did understand their industry. They understood what their customers needed in order to be successful, and they cared about that. And they cared about their suppliers giving them the right thing at the right time. And so they cared. And so there's something to talk about, especially business to business. It's more the business to consumer that is tough to try and create a relationship because you might only sell a leather jacket to a customer, every 5 years, or a suit every several years. Nowadays, every 10 years. How many people buy suits all the time? So I mean, there are a lot of those things that used to be. The men's business used to be all relationships.
Right.
You'd go in and they would set you up with a shirt that matched your eyes and, matched, the suits that they know that you bought. And, I mean, it was really,
Wow, Ray, what's he talking about?
yeah, I know it's gone, isn't it? It's gone, completely gone.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
used to be something, even in my little town that I grew up in with 15,000 people, we had two or three independent men's stores,
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
and
I remember that.
they're all gone now. And so things have really changed there. Many of them didn't make it because they didn't recognize the change, and they just they couldn't cope. It's a part of that 95% that goes out of business in 10 years.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing, relationships with our customers are so vital to a small business that the failure rate is many times because they don't make minor adjustments they need to. John, I think your example of Quickset and the locking mechanism that seems so simple suddenly becomes a huge challenge for you because they didn't adapt. And that's an example of a huge company. Imagine what it's like for some one or two person business not making adjustments necessary for them to keep going.
Right,
Which is why the fallout is so dramatically high.
right,
Well, we're starting to see that in staying in the home appliance and all that with Home Depot and with Lowe's and with these guys. They're starting to do cost analysis and how many turns they're shipping product, and they're making decisions based on what they turn versus what their clients need.
Hmm.
And so at the end of the day, it's interesting because in the larger market, you end up with less choice. And one of the interesting upside down things is when I came from New Zealand, 4 million people, to America in the electronics industry, I discovered that in New Zealand, we actually had a better selection of electronic consumer goods than we do in America. And I was going, why is this? Well, in New Zealand back in the 80s, we had Danish, Scandinavian, German, Swiss, we had Scottish, all these manufacturers, because you could bring in 10 or 20 of a product equally competitive. There was no dominant supplier in the New Zealand supply. So you could bring in these small, and they would be competitive. In America, you had a couple of very major players that dominated the market and brought the price down. Nobody else from overseas could really compete with that price, even though they had a better, wider, exclusive product. And that's, of course, shifted now. I mean, Mercedes-Benz made an effort to come in there. Toyota's made an effort to come in. People in America are now wanting something different than the middle of the road. Um, and so it has changed, but it still hasn't changed. If you want to go and buy flip-flops or shoes or clothes, you're very restricted to stuff that's basically available any state, anywhere in America. You're not going to go to a boutique that brings in Scandinavian shoes. That's probably, there may be one or two, but they don't really exist. But you will if you go overseas to New Zealand, you'll find them. You'll find, if you go to Spain, you'll find them. You'll find uh, stores that have stuff from all around the world.
Hmm.
So in a way, um, we're caught in our own conundrum here, where we've become middle of the road, cost efficient thinking with efficiencies driving us.
Yeah, that actually is a perfect lead into number three, because number three, oops, wrong way. Number three is niche focus. And that's one of my favorite subjects.
Yes,
Um,
it is.
wrote a book on this subject. And Uh, this is one of the ways that you can really develop your own marketplace and differentiate your market from everybody else's market. And there are companies that are able to do that. In the future here, as we kind of expand on these, we'll have some better and more extensive examples of real companies that do this. But when you consider relationships, as Ray was just discussing, one of the reasons a relationship with your customers is so critical is because if you know their business well enough, you can anticipate what it is that they need. And if you can anticipate what they need, you're helping to expand your little niche a little bit. Not, you don't want to go too far, but if you're supplying pumps, and somebody says, "Well, I need to have a lot of pipe." Well, that's not your business. You're not going to try to figure out how to invent pipe again. But if they say, "Gee, I wish I had a pump that did this, this, and this," you might consider solving that problem for them so that they didn't have to start looking at other pump companies. So that's kind of the general relationship of having that relationship is the way that you actually better define your market. So if you have a niche that nobody else can fill, there's only one place for them to go. That example of chairlift is one of them. It's nobody wants to get into the business of servicing several thousand chairs, broadly distributed across the United States, and build a better whatever it is that's in there, motor and corkscrew, that makes it go up and down. They've developed a mechanism that is so specific that no one can afford to build replacement parts because the market's not big enough. You don't
Yeah.
have millions of these chairs. Oh, I don't know, maybe there are, but yeah, I doubt there are millions of these chairs around because they have some competition too, that that work a specific way, and that's not enough to put it into production to be able to have a replacement part. So it's to their advantage to really build and engineer their own mechanical stuff there. So That's really part of it. But then there are other ways to develop niches, and one of them is with customers. The way in relationships, and I'll only mention this briefly because everybody will immediately relate to it, and that is that financial advisors are relationship driven. We all know financial advisors, and we know that the ones that know how to build relationships are the ones that are successful. It's
Yes.
really very simple. Now, do they sit there and compete on return on investment? Oh, sure they do. But do we as consumers of, say, financial products go out and go, uh, Joe had a 12.2% return last year, and you only had a 10.9%. I'm going to switch over. I'm going over to Joe. No,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen. You have to have years of poor performance before you go, "Nah, I don't know. I don't think he really knows what he's doing. He's a nice guy, but he doesn't really know what he's doing." So, I mean, once you have that relationship, and especially if you can just perform at the average, you don't have to be the best.
Yeah.
You have to perform on an average in the industry and you will be successful. That's how important it is. Why? Because the niche is the relationship itself.
Yeah.
So then there are other things that you can accrue. We'll talk in another program about the PIMS principles, the PIMS principles. And this is a principle that's been discovered a long, long time ago. You guys have heard me talk about it, but nobody, I mean, we're talking 30 years now, nobody really knows about this. And I almost never bring this up in an audience where anybody has even heard of it. It's so remote. And that's because somebody bought the rights to the book, took all the books are out of print. They bought all the books online that they could. They literally removed the excuse me, removed the information from the market. So that excuse me.
While you're gathering your wind there, Ron, I want to go back a little bit and talk about relationships as it relates to the hiring and firing. There's an old adage out there: hire slow, fire fast. And one of the things that, I've done with, I think with both of you is that, I had a pre-hire assessment and its purpose was specifically to cut down on turnover. And I think it's like the loss of an employee is equivalent to a half a year's income. I mean, it can be huge. And one of the challenges that I see, and it's hard for people to get into, is that if you can give them a pre-hire assessment, you can tell if somebody's going to be honest or not. And that in itself can be a huge impact on the business. But getting an employer to spend $20 to determine whether somebody is a good fit before you hire them is amazingly difficult. It's astounding to me as we watch how businesses grow and we see where the real problems in small businesses occur. And again, when we're talking about companies with fewer than 5 employees, it's extremely difficult to find good people. And if you don't, you're going to be stuck.
True. And if they happen to be salespeople, you're also buying their relationships,
Right.
to create in a niche. And so that's all part of it. So those are three really important issues in terms of building moats. Sorry, my throat is giving out on me. And so I think since my voice is so bad, why don't the two of you summarize and we'll wrap this up?
Yeah, I'll summarize the relationship part. And, obviously externally, those of us who have been successful in small businesses really value that client relationship. And secondly, is that we've all learned that unless we find the right people, it can destroy our business very quickly. So, having those things are, to me, the most important thing of relationships.
Mhm.
Yeah, and on the moat strategy or the idea of how do we retain our client base and grow it, of course, part of that is we do what we signed up to do. They came to us for a particular product and service. We do that as good as, if not better. We try to improve. So there's that point of trying to meet the needs. Some people sign them in with leases or opportunities to stay with a longer period of time, that's a good thing. We include services that would be more cost effective and a bit harder for the other people to do it. And then, Ron, you mentioned that monopolies, by their very nature, are in effect a moat or a small moat, and that's true. Uh, the flip side of it is you want to be friendly with everybody you got. We've got a local car dealer here in the area we live who has developed a very, very good relationship with the community, is, I believe, very profitable. And people don't mind paying money for doing business with these guys, but they get more than they bargained for. They get personal service. It's the old-fashioned business model where you
Yeah.
feel like you're cared and respected for. And that comes back to the trust. And so they make money, and the clients themselves have a full rounded experience, and they can be respectful of yeah, I'm with so and so. Oh, they'll take care of you.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. Now, word of mouth is an excellent support for all the things that we've been talking about. So, well, we haven't been able to touch on everything. There are a lot more points to talk about as far as building a moat, but those are the three. Those are the three top ones. And so, if you can start working on that, there are other sources to determine how to do that in your own industry. And we're going to be talking about this a lot more in the future programs in 2026. So, Happy New Year
Yes.
to you all, and hope to see you here next time.
All right. Good job.